Today, we're going to be talking about my top 10 favorite picks from day 3 of the 2025 NFL Draft. Hey, welcome into today's episode of the Draft Beard Podcast. I am your host, Joshua Klein. And tonight on the podcast, we are going to be discussing my top 10 favorite picks from the 2025 NFL Draft on day 3. So rounds 4 through 7, you can find some really good players, some starters. You've had people who've made it to the Hall of Fame from being picked on days 4 through 7. Most of all, you get some depth pieces and starters. And I think there were quite a few players who ended up in really great spots or were much higher on my board or the consensus big board who got drafted on day 3 of the NFL Draft. And we're going to go over those today on tonight's episode. But before we do that, if you could do me a favor, if you could like, subscribe, and share, I would really appreciate it. Don't forget to hit that notification bell. Like, subscribe, and share helps get that information out there on this podcast to people who are loving all things NFL Draft, or maybe sports related. So don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and share, and hit that notification bell. You don't want to miss an episode of the Draft Beard Podcast, and a great way to do that, besides subscribing, is also hitting that notification bell so you get notified exactly when my podcast airs. So with that, we're going to get started right away. And I had 10 guys who I picked out of all of those picks who I really liked, either their landing spot or, like I said in my intro there, that they were much higher on my board or the consensus board, and they were picked much later than I anticipated. And one of the first players I want to get to is my number 10 favorite pick of day 3 of the NFL Draft, and that's David Walker, the edge rusher from Central Arkansas. He was a round 4, 121st overall pick. I really liked that pick. I think he just went to a really good spot. He's a developmental pass rusher, can come into the league and possibly be a designated pass rusher right away. I had him, I believe, right around 86, 87-ish on my board. So I think they got really good value at 121st overall. But I think he went to a great scenario with Tampa Bay. He can play behind Hassan Reddick. They need some pass rushing help. He can be kind of worked into the roster or worked into the starting lineup. So I really like that pick there. I think it was great value. 2, I just think it was a great fit. Tampa Bay did a good job. They picked up some corners in the draft, picked up a wide receiver, which if you watch one of my previous episodes, I wasn't a big fan of the fit for Emeka Egbuka there, but really liked the pick of David Walker. I think he has the potential to be a really good player in the NFL. He has just pass rush moves that you just can't teach. Really athletic, good speed, gets around the edge. And I think this is a great spot for David Walker landing in Tampa Bay. A really good defensive-minded coach in Todd Bowles. So I like that a lot. Tampa Bay definitely needs some pass rush so they can stop blitzing so much. So that was a great pick by Tampa Bay, and it's a great spot for David Walker himself for him to thrive. Number 9 on my list is Chris Paul Jr. from Ole Miss. He went round 5, 172nd overall. Linebacker. He's going to be kind of more maybe of a will linebacker. Really good, maybe all-around linebacker, not really somebody to play in the middle, but a really good, hard-working player. And again, the Rams had a desperate need at linebacker, but they just don't value them as highly as other teams. You know, I could have seen them maybe picking Carson Schweshinger or somebody like that earlier in the draft, but they waited to round 5, and they got themselves a guy who's going to, I think, come in and he's going to start. I think he's going to be a 3-down linebacker in the NFL. I really liked him a lot. So the Rams get really good value with Chris Paul. I was looking at my draft board here to kind of remember where I had him rated, and I had Chris somewhere around in the 80s or 90s, somewhere in that threshold. And overall linebackers, I had him as a 3rd-round grade, right behind Demetrius Knight and Carson Schweshinger. And if you look at where he went in round 5. And so you had players like Demetrius Knight, who went in the 2nd round, Carson Schweshinger in the 2nd round. So big gap between the two, but I don't think the gap in the rating between them was not that big. So I think Chris Paul was great value there for the Los Angeles Rams. They've had really good success at picking players like that I think I can't remember the player's name. There was a UDFA last year who ended up starting for them. So great pick by the Los Angeles Rams. They're getting Chris Paul in round 5, 176th overall player. I will tell you right now, he's definitely not the 176th best player in this draft. They got him somewhere roughly around 80 to 90 at that spot. And next up is my number 8, and that is Malachi Moore going to the New York Jets at round 4, pick 130 overall. Malachi was one of my favorite players in this draft. He's just a productive player in college, high PFF grades. And I just kept looking at either what I watch on film and what I read, and he is just a tremendously good college player. I don't know if he's going to be an exceptional player at the NFL level, but I definitely saw a guy with as a potential starter. I had him as a 3rd round grade. I had him rated ahead of players like Jonas Sanker, Billy Bowman Jr. I actually had him rated ahead of Kevin Winston Jr., mostly because of the injury concerns with Kevin. But I really liked Malachi Moore, and I thought a team like that I root for, and you guys can obviously tell because I wear a lot of Lions gear. I got Lions gear behind me. I thought he would be in a perfect fit for the Detroit Lions, who need some extra depth at the safety position. But of course, he goes to the Jets, goes to Aaron Glenn. Definitely a prototype, perfect Aaron Glenn type defender that he's going to have in the back end there. So I loved that pick. That is a great pick for the New York Jets, getting him in round 4 at 130th overall on the board. I had Malachi Moore. He was right around in the 70s-ish spots on my draft board. 81, sorry. Yeah, he was the 81st player I had on my big board. So, again, they get really good value getting Malachi Moore there in the 4th round. And next up on my list, it's number 7. And this is a player that went in round 6, 177th overall, a player that I had rated at 104. He was my 13th rated corner on my draft board. And that's Dorian Strong out of Virginia Tech. I had Dorian Strong as a late 3rd, early 4th round grade, and he goes in round 6. I had him just behind my number 11 overall corner, just behind Maxwell Harrison, who is my number 10 overall corner. Now, I wasn't as high on Maxwell. I don't really like really thin-bodied cornerbacks, but Maxwell was drafted in the very 1st round, 30th overall, and I don't think the difference between Dorian Strong and Maxwell Harrison is almost 130-ish pick difference between the two. So I think Buffalo got a really good value there in the 6th round at 177th overall. The player who I had much higher, getting 72, 73-ish difference in value. That is a really strong pick, no pun intended, by Buffalo. Now, he has some weaknesses to his game. He's going to have to develop. I think he can be a decent press corner with some development. I think he can come in and be an okay zone corner right away. So as a guy who can come off the bench, develop, figured that's what he would need to do. Great spot for Buffalo. Buffalo needed some corners as well, and he gets picked in the 6th round, where his counterpart Maxwell gets picked in the 1st round. I think is tremendous value there by the Buffalo Bills, picking at round 6, 177 overall. My next guy is another 6th round pick who I viewed absolutely much higher than this, and that is Aeneas Peebles of the Baltimore Ravens. Round 6, 210th overall player picked, who just goes to an absolute great spot for him. I had him 103rd rated on my board. I know that he's got some weaknesses to his game, but if you want an interior pass rusher, a little bit of a tweener, Aeneas Peebles is going to do that. I think he went to, again, a great situation with Baltimore, who just knows how to develop these guys. And to get him in round 6, almost 107 spots better, he went way farther down the draft board than I thought he should go. Being available in round 6 and getting Aeneas Peebles is an absolute steal for Baltimore. And this is what they do. They are just brilliant at doing things like this, getting tremendous value, using the comp picks or using late round picks to fortify their roster. Aeneas Peebles is going to fit right in, probably develop very well with Baltimore. could be a good rotational piece, the pass rusher on pass rushing downs, third down guy. Maybe you can develop into more, but getting him in the 6th round is just an absolute steal by the Baltimore Ravens. That is a great pick by the Ravens. And next up on my list at number 5, and that is Cam Skattebo to the New York Giants. Cam going to the New York Giants it just fits great with what they have at Tyrone Tracy. And Tyrone, great receiving back, had a great year last year, but now you can get a good 1-2 punch. A guy who we all know, we've watched Cam. He is a guy who relishes contact. He wants that. Hey, he may only last one contract in the NFL because he's just going to get beat up with his play style, upright running style, looking for that contact. But it's a perfect balance with who they already have there in New York. And he can come in, be a starter, or share carries with Tyrone. Great pick by the Giants. Round 4, 105th overall. That's, I think, a great spot for Cam Skattebo. So really good pick by the New York Giants. That brings me to my next guy on my list. And this is going to be my first of 2 picks by the Kansas City Chiefs. And this is another one of my guys who is one of my favorite picks in the draft. And that's Brashard Smith, the running back out of SMU. I had Brashard as my 10th overall running back in this class. Great receiving back. You could tell he has wide receiver ability because he was previously a wide receiver, moved over to running back when he transferred over from Miami to SMU. And what a great pick by the Kansas City Chiefs. Getting him in round 7 is absolute fabulous value. Brashard can come in, and I think he can play a really good role. Start off as a 3rd down back. I think he can develop into more. I would not be surprised if he got starter reps at some point during the season. So 7th round for Brashard Smith is an absolute steal of a pick for the Kansas City Chiefs. I had him at 90th overall on my board. So getting a player in the 7th round at the 228th pick overall, what phenomenal value. Kansas City does it. This is what great teams do. Getting really good players who can contribute. You could possibly get a starter here for your team in the 7th round. And next up, another Kansas City Chief pick, and that is round 4, 133rd overall. And that's the wide receiver out of Utah State, Jalen Royals. Jalen Royals is a very sure-handed receiver. I like him a lot. He's 6 foot. I think he is going to be a guy who is going to be a good complement to what they need there in Kansas City. So I really liked Jalen Royals. In fact, I had Jalen as my number 9 receiver. I had in an upper 3rd round grade on Jalen Royals. So Kansas City gets an absolute steal of a pick here. And it's a great fit for Jalen because it helps complement what they already have on their roster. So great pick there. And when I'm saying that probably over and over, but Jalen Royals is going to be great value for the Kansas City Chiefs. So that's 2 Chiefs picks in my top 10, Brashard Smith and Jalen Royals. And then that takes me to number 2 on my list. And it's another wide receiver that I was really surprised with there. I guess maybe there were some health concerns with Alec Ayomanor out of Stanford, who went in round 4, 136 overall to the Tennessee Titans. This is a spot where they really needed receiving help. And getting a player like Alec is great value. He can play the X. He's a great blocker. He's going to help Cam Ward out tremendously. He's got really good hands. So like that pick a lot. Getting him in round 4 is tremendous. And go back and watch his game with Stanford against Colorado. And he's about the only receiver who just had Travis Hunter's number. And Tennessee needed receivers. They were able to pick up quite a few, actually, pass catchers in this draft to help out their new hopeful franchise quarterback in Cam Ward. They got Alec Ayomanor. They ended up getting Gunnar Helm, the tight end. They picked Jameer Adike. They also, as a UDFA, I guess, picked up Xavier Restrepo, who was Cam Ward's teammate. but Eilick can come in there and battle for, wide receiver 2 or 3 reps in production with Tennessee this year. Phenomenal pick. He was my second favorite pick from day 3 in the 2025 NFL draft. Next up is my absolute favorite pick of day 3 in the 2025 NFL draft. And this is a guy I really just could not believe that he kept falling down the draft boards. I know that he only had 1 year of really good production, and that was Braden Swinson out of LSU. I had him as my number 5 edge rusher in the class, and I had him as number 31 overall in my draft board, and he went to 137th pick overall in round 5 to the New England Patriots. That is a phenomenal pick by the Pats. I really am kind of at a loss for words. I don't have a logical explanation other than medical as to why a person or football character concerns maybe that we don't know about, why a player with that sort of ability and production falls to round 5. And it's another one of those picks. The Patriots actually had a stellar draft. When I go through my class rankings, I anticipate them to be really high this year in one of the best draft classes around. But getting Braden Swinson, an excellent pass rusher out of LSU, who is one of my favorite players in the class. Again, number 31 on my board. I think he was one of the top players rated that made it to day 3 in the 2025 NFL draft. He was my highest rated player that made it to day 3. Really surprised, really stunned. And the New England Patriots not only got great value, but I think they've got a potential starting edge rusher. Maybe not a guy who's going to get you double-digit sacks, but I think he could be a consistent starting 3-down edge rusher in the NFL. And getting somebody like that in round 5 is ludicrous, in my opinion. Great job by the New England Patriots and their staff snagging Braden Swinson in the 5th round. So to recap my top 10 favorite picks on day 3, we've got David Walker, the edge rusher from Central Arkansas, who is number 10 going to Tampa Bay. 9 was Poop Hall, the linebacker, going to the Rams. He went in the 5th round. Malachi Moore going to the Jets. That's the safety out of Alabama. Dorian Strong went in the 6th round. He was out of Virginia Tech, going to the Bills. Defensive tackle Anais Peebles going to the Baltimore Ravens in round 6. Number 5, it was Cam Scadaboo going to the Giants. Number 4, Brashard Smith in round 7. Okay, going to the Kansas City Chiefs. Jalen Royals also going to the Kansas City Chiefs in round 4. I like A.O. Maynor going in round 4. And then round 5, my number 1 by far absolute steal on day 3 was Braden Swinson. So let me know in the comments who are your big value picks on day 3 of the NFL draft. There were plenty more. I also didn't want to be a homer and talk about some Lions picks. They had some really good ones late in the draft. Brad Holmes does it again. But let me know who you thought were some of the top steals on day 3, or some of who are your favorite picks overall of the entire 2025 NFL draft. We've made it all the way through this year's draft. It was a really fun, good draft. I don't think there were a lot of teams who just stunk it up. I think there were a lot of good picks made this year by teams. I think teams maybe getting a little bit better at this. I don't know if it's the analytics or what, but I don't see a lot of teams, at least when I was reviewing them, who had a really bad drafts. So there's a lot of good average to really good drafts out there. Didn't see a lot of reaches this year. Maybe some players that, as we saw in my top 10 here, who fell down the draft board, which I was really surprised that did. So thank you guys so much for joining me. We'll be back with our next episodes coming up. We're going to recap briefly each team, and we're going to do that by division. That'll be upcoming in episodes of the Draft Beard podcast. And later in the week, we will rank all the classes from 32 to the top class of the 2025 NFL draft. So until then, have a great night and enjoy your week.
The Draft Beard podcast.